Operations will support about 400 jobs, which translates into $19 million in labor income. And that labor income and those jobs are an annual, so they're ongoing. Notably, operations will drive almost $70 million a year in business sales, while your short-term construction project will generate $3.5 billion in sales. Here's an example of the the job breakdown. If you notice, there's a table on the right and a pie chart on the left. The table gives you the total number of jobs, but the chart on the right will show you kind of how those lay out. Not surprisingly, in the capital project, most of the jobs are construction, but then if you notice, the next 4 areas are pretty well distributed. In the O&M jobs, you'll notice that a majority of the jobs are in transportation, and that's how you operate your service, and it's about 1/3. And not far behind is professional and business services. The low range jobs gave us similar results, but it was just at a reduced level. And the jobs were probably about, came out with a very similar breakdown. So what does this mean? To summarize, the capital projects, you can have anywhere between 16 and 22,000 jobs in your region, and with $2.5 to $3.5 billion in sales revenue. While when your new service starts, you'll have anywhere from 330 to 400 operations jobs with annual revenues around $56 to $69 million. Once again, these are the sources that we used. If you'd like to look further into them, I believe that this presentation will be posted to your website. As you can see from our results, this project will have phenomenal economic impact in your region. It will not only provide, and not while still providing, an alternative to the congested corridor in the Tri-Valley area, and almost $70 million a year in sales revenue. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to learn about the Valley Link project and a little bit about that economic impact in the region.
Okay, thank you. I would ask if there's any questions.
Chair, if I may, I can find my little hand to raise.
Hold on, I have hands raised. Director Warner.
Hi, thank you. My question is that I appreciate the economic impact study. Is there anything unusual about the percentages of these categories, or would you just say this is typical of similar projects?
I would say it's very typical of projects. You'd see most of the jobs in construction, or you'd see most of the jobs in transportation. I could look further into it as far as breakdowns of similar projects, but right now I would say it lines up fairly well.
Okay, are you good, Director Warner?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Vice Chair Vargas?
Yes, Chair. My question is about full-time jobs. So is that 17,000 to 22, is that all the jobs through the creation? But later on, we are looking into what are the full-time jobs that we will be having.
The tool does not report in full-time jobs because it goes all the way down to those induced jobs. So it just gives you jobs. That's why we provided jobs and income, so you have a better flavor of things.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I have a quick question, and maybe I didn't just read the slide correctly, but when you were showing jobs, you showed 0 agriculture. And, you know, we have a pretty vibrant wine region, and I'm wondering why people wouldn't use the train to commute between the 2 agricultural reasons.
I'm not sure, but I can look into that. I'm not sure exactly how the tool breaks it down, especially something is, if wine is considered agriculture or if it might be considered something else. But we can take a look into it and find out, maybe find out how it's doing that, because it's taking regional information.
Yeah, I think they do consider wine as agriculture. And so I would like you to look at that. I mean, we also have other agricultural products coming up that, you know, are going to need people working between the valley, both valleys, or the valley link. So I would appreciate it if you would look at that a little deeper. Anybody else have any questions?
No one in the public has their hands up.
Well, I don't have no hand, so I don't know what to raise.
Paul, do you have your hand up?
Yes, Mr. Chair. It's just amazing looking at the reports, the number of jobs and the revenue that can be generated with the Valley Link project. It's amazing, the breakdown. I agree with you, Mr. Chair, that we need to include agric in our analysis. If they can do that, that would be really, really interesting to see. I'm sure those numbers will grow even as we include the winery and all the orchard and all those things that the Valley brings onto the table. Thank you so much for that job description.
Thank you, Paul. I don't know if you know this or not, but if you click in under participants, then that's where it will allow you to mute yourself and also raise your hand.
All right, Mr. Chair, I get it.
Okay, good. Anybody else? If so, just speak up if I don't see her. I see Bob Warner's back again.
Now I'm back. Thank you. I just wanted to understand, based on this conversation on the jobs, is it the jobs that are created because of the work being done either during construction or on the ongoing operations, or are we talking about jobs that are created because people are riding the Valley Link and going to jobs? And I'm trying to get the distinction here, because you could say the workers certainly not at lunch, but for dinner are having wine, and therefore that would drive demand, and then the wineries would hire more workers. Or exactly what's the link between these projects and the operations and the job creation? Is it the knock-on effects of more people are drinking wine because there are more people there? Or could you elaborate on that? Because I believe, for me, the conversation on the jobs was a little, I didn't quite get it.
So the job breakdown, there was 2 types of job breakdowns. One with the capital, which is when you're building the project. And that's the number of jobs, the construction jobs, and even the further jobs, which would be the support industry to make your transformers or your vehicles, manufacturing or assembling your vehicles if you're doing it in the local area. And then the operations and maintenance jobs, or are the jobs that are created because you are running the service. So it includes the job that you would have to maintain and operate your vehicle. And then it's also the additional jobs that you would have for people, for the paper that you need to print your reports, or the accounting service you may need to do your financials. And it's also that of the people who are providing your paper. So it includes those. So that's why there's so many jobs at the capital side, which is a short-term project. And then there's the ongoing 330 to 400 jobs that you would get annually to sustain your service.
So if I might, I think what you did was a good clarification. And the point is that the jobs such as agriculture and all the other industries would be possibly, be more demand driven there by the presence of all these other workers. But what I think I heard you just say is those kinds of jobs are not included in this analysis, but as was pointed out by Chair Haggerty, it's reasonable to assume that with the presence of that kind of money circulating in the local economy, that just in general, there would be more demand for things and there would be additional jobs beyond which is covered in this study.
And I'm not sure, but I could look into what exactly it is producing in the model, the APTA model, and how far it dives into the forecasted kind of growth there.
Yeah, I think I can't remember now, it's been a long time since I studied economics, but I think the term is the velocity of money and how many times it turns over. And so it may be that you're only talking about the initial turn of the money and that there's actually going to be many more turns that would drive these other jobs that I think we could at a minimum allude to if they're not quantitatively analyzed.
All right, anybody else? I see no other hands. Okay, we're going to move on then, unless Michael, you have anything you want to say to wrap it up?
Hey, only to say that this was kind of the first edition of the model. And I think everyone at the staff level anticipates building the model further. So these are good comments and we can return and have a continued discussion on the output.
Okay, thank you. We look forward to getting this report back, and thank you, Ms. Sagami.
Welcome.
Okay, we'll move to item 7.
Okay, I'll tee that agenda item up. As you'll recall, as we exited the feasibility report and continued on with the environmental report, it was obvious that the ridership in 2040 with a 12-24 headway, meaning 12-minute frequencies of the train in the Tri-Valley and 24-minute frequencies of the train in the San Joaquin Valley during the peak period, the ridership was too high on the San Joaquin side. And so as the trains came in, they were actually at crush loads and even leaving folks behind on the platforms in some cases, as I recall. And so we had made the commitment to go back and to take a look at 1212 throughout the first phase to see if that would work with the passing lanes and I think the complications that are there when you're trying to run a single track railroad with passing lanes. So LTK provided the modeling services for us. We've received back the modeling results. And I think in short, the 1212 can be done. Complications with the passing lanes arise in the Altamont section, meaning that the passing lanes need to be in locations different from where we had them and also in different lengths. I also think there were some passing lane adjustments that will need to be made on the 580 section and elsewhere. And so really this is a report for LTK to come talk to you about the modeling that was performed, the passing lanes that are envisioned now with the 1212 modeling, and also the 10-minute reduction in travel time that they were able to incorporate into the schedule based on the modeling that was performed. So with that, we have Lisa Cobb here with LTK and also Tom Madoff to talk to us about that.
Thank you, Michael. Next slide, please. Let's go to the next slide. I'll summarize this. Okay, as we know, Valley Link is a single-track railroad, and the analysis which we did answers the question of how can we provide service on our railroad that is as close as possible to the quality and level of service that could be operated on a double-track railroad, given that we want to operate effective two-way service and we want to minimize running time. And let's move back one slide. Thank you. No, back one more. There we go. The answer, as Michael said, is that we can do this. We can do it by strategically locating passing sidings on our line. And by passing sidings, I am referring to full service, full speed sections of double track. We're not talking about the sidings that you find, for example, on a freight railroad. If sometimes you ride a passenger train and you go into a siding and you sit there for 20 minutes waiting for the opposing freight train to go by. That's not what we're designing here. The design is intended to keep trains moving and avoid stop and wait situations. Next slide. To do this, there are really 5 basic factors that we need to know. We need to know the grades and curvature of the line, the performance capability of our proposed vehicle type, the operating speed at all points along the line, the proposed headway, and the proposed station locations. And I'll take these one at a time and just go through them quickly. We can ask for questions at the end. So first, grade, next slide. Yeah, grades and curvature. Most of this is already done. It was based on earlier work with some updating. Back one, Lisa. Thank you. Caltrans obviously has all the grade and curvature data on the 580 section in the Livermore Valley, and BART has done a lot of engineering work on through Livermore extension work over the decades. So much of that was available. When we get onto the railroad right-of-way, railroad records are extensive. They have large engineering departments, and so the data were pretty good on grades and curvature. Next slide. Vehicle performance. As you know, no specific vehicle has been selected. We have a concept of a diesel multiple or a multiple unit car, a train, but that is going to require a competitive procurement, and as you know, further technological evaluation is still going to be done. But we can assume a candidate vehicle as an example for planning and analysis purposes based on what was done in the feasibility report. And this gives us the minimum vehicle performance required for our line. And as an example, we have used a Stadler, next slide, 3-car DMU. It's built in Salt Lake City. It's similar to the E-BART car. The E-BART DMU is a 2-car multiple unit. This is 3 cars. Each DMU has 3 passenger cars and 1 power unit. I don't know whether, you can see it from end to end, 3 passenger cars and 1 power unit where the diesel engine and the propulsion generating equipment is located. The MU is 215 feet long, end to end. It has a 24-inch floor height, so that the platforms, which will also be at 24 inches, will load level into the car. You don't have to climb up into the train. It's level boarding like BART. You can just walk right in, or if you're in a wheelchair or a scooter, you can roll right into the train. Each 3-car DMU has 166 people seated and can carry 134 standees. So one DMU can carry 300 people. Each train scheduled over the line can have 1 3-car DMU or 2 or 3 3-car DMUs eventually. So we can have 3, 6, or 9 cars on an each individual train, each MU carrying 300 people. So the capacity can be pretty high if necessary. So that's the candidate vehicle, and its performance is well known. Next slide. We have to know the speed at all points along the line, and that was calculated by a simulation model. The model takes the physical characteristics into account, the vehicle performance, the efficiency of the signal system, and it takes operational reality into account. There is variation in performance between one train operator and another. Not everyone is an automaton operating exactly the same way every time. So there is some variation, and we make conservative assumptions about how the performance will occur. And at the terminals at Dublin Pleasanton and at North Lathrop, a realistic estimate of time to change from one end of the train to the other, to activate the other cab and activate the train control system was incorporated. Next slide. This looks complicated, but it's not as complicated as it looks. This is a diagram, a plot of a train making a one-way trip from BART to North Lathrop. And the red line indicates, from left to right, the x-axis is the mileage, and the vertical axis is the speed at any point along the line. So the red line indicates the maximum permissible speed at any point along the route. And you can see on the flat part of the line from BART to Greenville Road, the speeds are relatively high, about up to 79 miles an hour. Then going over Altamont Pass, the speeds are lower. They vary a little from place to place, depending on how the grades are and what the curvature is. Then you get into the valley floor, and then things speed up again. The green line shows what trains actually do within the envelope of permissible speeds. And this is important because the faster the train can go, the farther apart the passing sidings can be. Where the trains go more slowly over Altamont Pass, the passing sidings have to be closer together. And so this model takes that into account in developing its recommendations for the passing siding locations and lengths. Next slide. No, back one. We should be at station locations here. I'm sorry, that's my mistake. Let's go to headway, back one. Headway is the number of minutes between trains going in the same direction. And Valley Link is designed to match BART's planned 12-minute headway. By the time the system is operating, we anticipate that BART's plans to get to a 12-minute headway will have been realized, and we need to have a system that is capable of meeting them effectively so that our capacity requirements can be met without overloading BART trains. So headway is an important consideration. And next slide, the proposed station locations are also important. Some alternatives, as you know, are being evaluated, but for analytical purposes, we had to make some assumptions based essentially on the feasibility report. But within that envelope of alternatives, we looked at the South Front Station in Livermore and the Mountain House Station in East Alameda County. Next slide shows the results in some detail. The columns on the left are the results in the earlier 15% design last year. On the right are recommended conceptual design. The next slide shows the summary, and I'll go through those really quickly for you. Our recommendation is actually to reduce the number of sidings from 14 to 12, but to increase the total length of the sidings from 38,000 to 86,000 feet, so that the average length of fewer sidings is about tripling. the total percent of the line that has a second track increases here from 17% to about 39%. And I will point out here a similarity to the Sacramento light rail system, which when it opened was similarly 40% single track, 40% double track, 60% single track, and it operated a 15-minute headway very effectively from end to end over the line. So we are definitely in the ballpark of proven feasibility here in California. The average end-to-end running time from BART to North Lathrop, we have been able to save 8 minutes. That's on average. There are differences eastbound and westbound, but 8 minutes from an hour and 11 minutes to an hour and 3 minutes one way. And in this case, the design does allow for a 12-minute headway over Altamont Pass, whereas the earlier design did not. So it makes it possible to achieve our main service objectives. Let's look at a couple of animations. Next slide. We have two concepts here. We have a 12-minute through concept. The first animation will show you a 12-minute headway from BART to North Lathrop. This requires 13 trains in operation, each with 2 3-car DMUs per train, and the overall fleet requirement is 32 3-car DMUs in the fleet. We do envision that you may want to engage in future proofing. If the anticipated growth is very high, permanent facilities may be designed for a 3-car DMU, 3-car trains in the future, 3 DMU trains, but we would not build to that standard at this point. If we can go to the animation, Lisa, let's, okay, so here we go. You'll see these, now the animation moves more rapidly than they actually would in service, but the orange trains are eastbound, and the pink trains are westbound, and you can see that the sidings are laid out to accommodate trains meeting and passing one another without delay. The little yellow rectangles are the station platforms, and so what is happening here is that trains are actually stopping at the platforms and then continuing on, and the station time is included in the running time from end to end. Okay, maybe we can go to the next slide. We also looked at the 12-24-minute concept where only every other train goes beyond Mountain House Station. So it's a train every 12 minutes from Dublin Pleasanton to Mountain House and a 24-minute headway to North Lathrop. This would require 11 rather than 13 trains in operation and a fleet size of 25 DMUs. And if we go to the next slide, you can see the animation of that service. And you can see that alternate orange eastbound trains, you'll see the next one will stop at Mountain House and terminate there and wait while the next westbound train will run around it. And that's a summary of what was looked at. You have a design that will work. It will provide the 12-minute headway over Altamont Pass, either to Mountain House or beyond if you wish. And at this point, we can ask for questions if there are any. You have a feasible railroad. Next slide. Questions?
Scott, you're on mute.
Something happened to my screen. I lost the screen, but a couple just real quick questions. Tom, are you done?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so how do we make sure that we don't have a catastrophe?
You mean like a collision of trains?
Okay, you said it, I didn't.
We have presumed a train control system, a signal system that incorporates all the necessary protections to stop a train. If an operator runs past a red signal or exceeds the permissible speed, the train control system will take control of the train away from him or her and stop the train. Everything comes to a stop. That's the state-of-the-art protection against operating catastrophes. So a single-track railroad can be protected against those events.
Okay. Warner, you have a question?
It was right along the lines you had. To what other systems are running that way, and what experience do we have with this? And I think more specifically, you can envision that this keeping them at speed with the siding tracks is, makes sense. You showed it, but the question is, how does that what speeds or how much distance between the approaching trains do you need in order to allow those safety measures to work effectively? And do we have a history of anywhere else doing this? That was the question. I have a second.
Okay, the first question is, the answer is yes. This is the system referred to as positive train control, which is now being implemented pursuant to federal law. The SMART system in the North Bay was equipped from opening day and has not had any problems, and it is gradually being implemented on all of the main passenger railroads in the country. Basically everything that has more than 4 trains a day will have to have positive train control. And it meets really rigorous technical requirements imposed by the Federal Railroad Administration. So yes, the answer is it's widespread throughout the country, and it's being implemented now.
Okay, and the second question was, do we have the economic impact of increasing the amount of additional siding to do this?
The new design with the reduced number of longer sidings will be developed into costs in the analysis of a revised design that is now being prepared by AECOM. So the capital cost of the revised design will go into an economic analysis.
Thank you.
Okay, Director Marchand.
Yeah, along the same line. Question regarding, since 61% is already in effect double tracked, I've looked at what the cost would be to double track the entire system. Since most of this is, we've already got the right of way in place.
Yes, that could be looked at. The question we were trying to respond to here was, how do we take a single track concept and make it work with reduced running time and handling the 12-minute headway? A fully double tracked line could of course be looked at, and that would be a capital cost to be developed by your capital cost estimators.
Ballpark, I mean, since we're already talking about 31% or 39% double tracked, and of course part of that double tracking is moving track up into the double track section. So just, I mean, maybe a ballpark as far as just the capital cost, since we already have the right of way.
Yes, but remember, you've got other things you'll have to deal with. Freeway overpasses, which have footings that may have to be moved. There's a tunnel on the far side of Altamont Pass that you would have to double track if you wanted to fully double track it. There are additional impacts and so on. And I guess the answer here is, I mean, I'm not advocating one over the other. I'm simply saying if you wanted to do it with a single track railroad, it is going to require about 40% of the length of the line will have to have passing sidings, and it will work. A double track system, of course, has advantages. It's less of a pain in the neck for the operations people to keep it operating when things go wrong. Things go wrong in the passenger business every day. You know, old men like me fall down getting onto trains, and it causes a delay. On a single track railroad, recovering from a delay is more difficult. So double track is easier to operate and will have overall better results. However, having been the manager of the Sacramento system, I will assert that a largely single track light rail line running on a 15-minute headway operated very effectively with very good timekeeping. Part of it is because in order to operate a single track line, all of the operators on the line have to have a cooperative attitude. Everybody has to know that if they are late, they're going to make everybody else late on a single track railroad. And I think that has a very good psychological effect on the operation.
Okay, John?
Yes?
Okay, good. I'll move on to Director Alone.
Does weather play into this?
I'm sorry?
Does weather play into this? Like, what happens to headways if it's raining hard and those sorts of things? Does that impact things? I mean, BART seems to suffer during weather. And I'm just wondering if that fits into your model at all?
I would say that weather plays into the model primarily given the hot weather that is experienced in the Central Valley. A crowded train, let's say 2-3 car, multiple units connected in a train packed with passengers, 600 people. It's a hot day. The air conditioning is running. That sort of thing is accounted for in the operation because of the operating assumptions that were assumed here. So the answer is yes. I think to the degree that it was accounted for, there is no further impact on weather. I doubt very much that rain would have a significant impact on the MU operation.
To the extent that you have more double tracking, you also have more track to maintain, right?
That is correct. Yeah, the track crews would have to be a little bit bigger probably. Okay. On the other hand, there are fewer sidings. So some of the maintenance effort goes into inspection and maintenance of switches, turnouts,
sure.
And with fewer sidings, there are actually fewer of them to maintain. But yeah, with 40% rather than 15% of the line having a second track, there would be an additional maintenance effort.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? I don't have any other speakers. Do we have any public that wishes to speak? Oh, yes, we do. Roland?
Can you hear me?
Of course.
All right.
Yes.
So very briefly to add to the long list of railway systems that you just heard of, this is exactly how the VTA light rail works south of Dirigen Station on the Vasona line, which is a single track next to Union Pacific. 15-minute headway, so it's 4 trains an hour per direction. However, they don't have PTC, but the drivers know how to read a red light and how to stop. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, thank you,
That
Roland.
is correct.
All right. Go back and see if there's any, there's still no other panelists. So I guess I never realized this, and I hate to expose a little bit of ignorance on my part, but if we had a 3-car unit, we just can't add one more car to it, right?
That is correct. The 3-car units are not broken down into 1 or 2 cars. except for maintenance purposes. In the shop, if you have to do some work, you can take them apart, but you wouldn't operate them that way. So it's either 3, 6, or 9 car trains.
So in the peak, are we still planning on only running 3 car trains or 6 car trains?
Well, new demand forecasts are being prepared, and we could answer that question there. You could break a two-unit train. A 2-unit 6-car train could be. You could drop one of the units in the off-peak and just operate a single 3-car unit if it turns out that that's all you need in the off-peak. But you'd have to store that somewhere operationally, and sometimes it may be less expensive operationally to keep it in operation during the middle of the day, for example, and then drop the car off at the maintenance facility at night.
And Tom and Chair Haggerty, I think it's worth pointing out that this is a concept vehicle at this point, and Rick is planning, I believe, to look into different options in order to ensure a competitive procurement and the best car type.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of my questions. Are we we're not wedded to this, and we may want to look to a multiple unit technology that can easily be broken up and add cars and take cars. Although I hear what you're saying, that it may be as cost effective just to run them. But to me, it seems like as business grows, we want to be able to grow the train. I mean, even similar to what ACE does. ACE will add, they'll add they'll add cars and run. So I just hope that as we move forward, looking for whatever technology and whatever train set we look at, that we be mindful of this and have a discussion when we get to that point. All right. So anybody else?
Yes.
Where are you? Who's yes?
That's John. I'm trying to figure out how to raise my hand with these buttons and I never could get it to work.
Okay, go ahead, John.
All right. A couple of things. We can anticipate that the ridership is going to go up and we're going to need to be able to carry more patrons, and that effect. As far as the cars, we've already had that discussion in the consensus. Initially, we have 2 options. One is to plan for the expansion and how long potentially we would end up making these things and make the platforms that long to start off with, or we can reserve the land depending on what the budget is and be able to construct and extend those platforms after the fact. If we can afford it, it'd probably be better if we ended up putting the extended platforms in first. What is more important though, if it comes down between the safety and the operation of the entire system, if we could, I'm going to be recommending and calling to everybody's attention that if we can double track the entire thing, we're going to be operationally a lot more secure as well as a lot safer. I don't anticipate with positive train control where we're going to have an accident, but if anything ever happens on the main line, if we've got 2 tracks, we have some flexibility with single tracking, and if not, we are done. And we just created one heck of a doggone fiasco. Those are the two main things that I had. Thank you.
I want to just say that I think that what Director Marchand, McPartland just said seems to make a lot of sense. If there is a chance that we could double track, I think we should at least understand what the cost is. The reason I say that is, as I have been told, and I've been told a lot in these last few days, I've been called a lot too, but there's some areas out there that are prone to flooding, and say, for example, there was some sort of flooding on the tracks. It would be good if we could, then switch to a single track as opposed to just call everybody up and say, sorry, not running today. So, and I just use that as maybe something that could happen. It could be something as simple as a tree falling down, or as Ace experienced in the canyon where the side of the hill came down onto the track. So, I mean, I think it's always probably best if we can afford the double track, but I think we need to know the cost to figure that out. Having said that, I'll go to Director Cantu and then back to Marshawn.
There we go. Okay. Actually, I had two questions, and I agree with the double track concept. It's always best to go that route. The other question is, are we, as a single track, are we lengthening the sidings so that the trains don't have to stop? They actually bypass each other. They're in continuous motion.
Yes, that is correct. That was the concept, was to keep everything moving.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I thought you had one more question. I thought you said you had two.
The other question was the double track.
All right, good.
And that
Move
was
over,
asked, and I agree.
move over to Director Marshawn.
Just going back to the 2019 plan was 17% double track. 2020 plan is 39%. What's the difference in cost between those two plans, just for the additional tracks?
I believe that is being worked on by the civil estimators. I don't know if Rick wants to add to that, but I believe that that is being developed for you.
Okay, so we don't have those numbers yet.
Not yet.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I guess the committee's saying we're looking forward to those numbers.
Karen?
Yes, I got Paul, and then I think that's Stepper trying to get a hold of me.
Right, it is.
Okay,
I
so
don't
you're
know how to
after
get my
Paul.
little fake hand up.
Okay, Paul Aquino.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and I believe we need to do the double tracking. But as for the cost, that means they have to bring another design back to us with double tracking instead of what they have now. Is that my understanding?
Mike, you want to weigh in on this discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I think staff's perspective thus far has been along the lines of AB 758, and that is get a system up as quickly as we can and as cost effectively as we can. But I'm hearing from the board today loud and clear that you'd want at least a cost estimate on the double tracking throughout that phase one. So we can work on that. We can bring that back.
It's only work, Michael.
There you go.
Yeah, Director Stepper.
Oh, just wanted to note that Danville had its own little catenary system from 1914 to 1928 down the middle of town. And when things didn't work, you had a shovel and a pail underneath the seat. And that's what I'm hearing here, is that we have fear that something's going to happen and we're not going to be able to operate some days when we're on a single system, and that the double system has a lot of safety and a lot more flexibility. And that's where I stand at this point in time.
Okay, so I'm going to say this, but I think you don't have a question, but I still have Director Cantu's hand up, but I'm assuming you're done.
Yes, thank you.
Director Cantu?
Yeah, I had one more question.
Okay.
I assume the control system is computerized so that the turnouts actuate at the proper time as the trains go through?
That is correct. It's yeah, it's a high-tech system. It is monitored from a central control board, but the actual train-to-train, minute-to-minute operation is all automatic.
Okay, good. Sounds like
Positive
Bart.
Train control system.
Bart.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? I see nobody. Okay, well, with that, Michael, anything you want to wrap up with, or can I move to the next item?
I'll go ahead and move to the next item. Just a quick comment that hopefully we'll have some cost estimates the next time we meet, and also some modeling of the ridership, because Director McPartland's absolutely right. A higher headway, more frequent train will generate higher ridership.
Yeah, I just, Mike, at some point you got to ground truth me on something. Somebody, you know, I every once in a while I'll get people pushing to say, well, express bus is the way to go. And in order to move the amount of passengers we're talking about on our train, would it take like 750 buses to do that?
You know, that's a good question. We're certainly looking at the bus option or the bus alternative in the EIR, and would probably want to limit any comments we have due to the fact that we're right in the middle of that EIR. But I think, Rick, you may have done some back of the napkin estimates on the number of buses, or Tom, I think I've seen it, and I think it's similar to what Chair Haggerty is alluding to.
So I would just say that maybe I don't want to do anything to jeopardize the EIR. So
Yeah.
let's just leave it at that. And I know Mayor Marchand doesn't want 752 buses running through his town. So
Yeah.
we'll get there. So, okay, let's move to item 8, which is the allocation to MTC.
And we'll have Rick Rattray, your program manager, handle this agenda item.
Okay. Coming. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Rick Rattray, and I'm pleased to be with you today. As has been mentioned, I'm the new program manager for Valley Link, and it's really an exciting project. I'm here to walk you through the Tier 2 MTC allocation request. I've been on this project for just over 2 months, and as excited as I am to help, I want to make sure we bring this thing in cost effectively and as expeditiously as possible.
Did everybody else lose their screen?
No.
My screen is black. Okay, go ahead, Rick.
Okay. So you may know from a couple of sessions ago that I was the EBAR program manager. I was involved in starting with the environmental phase and took it through commissioning and turnover to operations. This also included the contract implementation, strategy and development, the Caltrans design and construction coordination for the median widening, and the vehicle procurement. So this Valley Link project is really right in my wheelhouse. So, with MTC, we've been using what's called a tiered allocation approach. The Tier 0 allocation was received some time ago. An amount originally requested had some PE in it, but it wasn't enough to complete the new effort. The Tier 1, Michael spoke about a little earlier, that we received from MTC March 25th, and this provided the funding for the updating the design and the 12-minute headways. So Tier 2 is what we're going to be talking about here, and that's for what FTA calls the project development phase. And this includes the 30% design, the Caltrans PA&ED, which stands for Project Approval and Environmental Documentation, and the federal environmental process called NEPA. This additional work should position a project to be ready for any emerging funding opportunities, such as potential federal sources, future Bay Area and San Joaquin County sales tax, plus any state sources. Lastly, it will allow me to bring in seasoned and trusted staff with a plethora of transit experience to ensure this project is done right. As I was becoming familiar with the project, I wanted to take a look at what the estimated cost should be to complete this next phase. So I asked AECOM to prepare a new estimate for my review, and I referenced it to 2 FTA data sources to validate the request. So these are the 2 FTA data sources. It's the capital cost database and the TCRP 138, which is called Estimating Soft Costs for Major Public Transportation Fixed Guideway Projects. The capital cost database is a database of as-built costs for 54 federally funded projects. The database is intended for performing historical cost analysis and developing order of magnitude cost estimates for conceptual transit projects. And these project costs are tracked in what's called the FTA's standard cost categories. The TCRP is a publication sponsored by FTA also. And as I mentioned, it's called Estimating Soft Costs for Major Transportation Fixed Guideway Projects. So the comparative costs is from these two sources and their derivation is detailed in the following slides. And we'll be looking specifically at two standard cost categories, and that's project management and project development. So we selected 8 representative projects from the capital cost database, with 4 in California, 2 of which are in the Bay Area. The project management percentages of each project's total construction cost is shown in yellow. The average of these costs for project management is 5.9%. So these project management percentages represent agency costs from design through the end of construction. Just keep that in mind because it's a little bit different than the next comparable for this. So we also looked at this a similar thing for the cost categories for project development, which includes preliminary engineering. Again, the yellow highlights some of the same, all the same projects, and the average of these costs for that phase is 3.8%. Unlike the project management, that is for the entire project that I mentioned, this percentage is only for this phase called project development. So then we looked at the what the TCRP said, because it breaks out things in a similar way. And if you look over here, you can see it says sponsored by the Federal Transit Administration. So we use 2 very credible sources. And what you do here is you start with the default averages that they provide you. This is a whole methodology you'll see on the next slide. And we adjust based on mathematical relationships and then categorical relationships, and then we apply some judgment. So we did similar percentages for this. And this is the chart that depicts the methodology for the preliminary engineering, the final design, the project management and construction administration, the insurance, and others. We're really dealing with 2 of these, the orange, which is the preliminary engineering, and the yellow, which is PM and construction administration. And I want to distinguish that because the number is going to be dramatically higher than the 5.9% you just saw. So we went through the formulas shown here, and the next slide will kind of quickly say for the project management, which includes the construction administration for the whole duration of the project, these are the factors that you apply to give you 26.8 through construction of the this is all of the construction costs. So then we went to the followed the same methodology or similar methodology, the default average and the mode for the project development preliminary engineering came up with 3.5%. So what does all this mean? It means, it kind of frames, where we could be, what the standard of the industry has been over the past. And so if you look at our feasibility, we got a low and a high cost here, and using for project management, the 5.9%. I'm not going to use a TCRP because, that's, we're not even talking about anything construction management related yet. So using the capital cost database, 5.9%, the range would be roughly $94 to $120 million. With this tier 2 allocation, our total request for this category is under $17 million. When you delete the or extract the first tiers, tier 0 and tier 1, that leaves 13.26 for this allocation, which, as you can see, is a far cry still from the potential of being up in these ranges. Now, I know we have a long ways to go, but I think we're still, well below the threshold for where many agencies would be at this stage, which you will see in the project development phase. We're also trending below average. So here we get to the project development phase and taking, again, the low cost feasibility and the high cost feasibility, and then using the FTA and the TCRP, because these aligned here, you would expect it between 55 and 77 million. We are envisioning at this point with the current scope to complete these tasks in the $43 million range, which, as you see, is still significantly under even the low of the low here. And again, when we extract the tier 0 and the tier 1, that leaves with our tier 2 request of 33.54 million. So this is just a little bit of a breakdown as to what's in the project development phase. As you can see, the most significant item here is what's called the Caltrans PA and PED. That's the project approval and environmental documentation. It's 13.2 million. And then we got a large amount to get through the Altamont based on the geotechnical work required. So as you can see, the rest is sort of distributed evenly throughout. The other thing to note is we got 33.54 in the prior slide because I just lumped the 500,000 for utility agreements in there, even though it's a different cost category just for expediency. So our total allocation request from MTC is for 46.8 million. And that's comprised of both the PD, which includes the PE, and the project management. And just so this is how that was derived. And then on April 21, we did present this to the executive steering committee, and they were all very, very supportive. And I sure some of you know Alex Bockelman, right? I have never heard this from Alex. Her concluding quote was, "I never knew I could feel so good about approving a $47 million allocation that was supposed to be 17. So that was sort of the unanimous, feeling from the whole committee. At the end, there were no questions. So I thought that was good. And so here, May 13, we're here before you with the, to try and get the authorization to move this forward and take an action. And then in June, we had 2 commission meetings, which should give us the final authority to expend. So let me back up one more slide. I'd be remiss if I didn't note that Michael Tree has identified a share of funding outside of Alameda County as a partial match for this allocation. So I don't know if you want to mention that, Michael, but while you do it, I'll put up the requested action.
Yeah, I'll just mention, and for sure, Vice Chair Vargas, if you want to add in, you've been real instrumental in this, but the city of Tracy, the staff has been looking at providing the 200 acres of land in the proximity of where we're looking at the O&M facility. I think it has a value. They're currently doing the appraisal, but the value is within $35 to $40 million for that property. And so they're looking to provide that as a share towards the action being taken by MTC.
Okay.
Like then we should be going to, sorry, Chair.
No, go ahead.
We should be going through a resolution to make it formal. So that way it's secure for the use of Valley Link.
So I have a completely black screen, and evidently y'all can see me, but What I'm going to say quickly, because I'll ask the clerk to tell me if there's anybody who wishes to speak on the director's side.
We have one hand up, and it's a telephone number ending 283. I'm not sure who it is.
Who is ending in 283? Speaker 283, unmute your phone and speak.
So maybe they accidentally did it.
Okay, so I know Roland LeBrun on the participant side wanted to say something, or on the attendee side. Roland, did you still wish to speak? Roland, unmute your phone and speak. All right. Having said that, are there any directors that wish to speak? Because I really do not have any screen at all.
So look, you have like Adrian, Brent, and Roland with their hands up. And I know you just called Roland, but Adrian?
Adrian, unmute your line and go ahead and speak.
Oh, she lowered her hand.
Okay, so at this point, as I'm understanding, again, I can't see a thing. Nobody wishes to speak on this item. There are no questions. Think that's happening, I'll ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve this line item.
I have a motion by Vargas.
I'll second.
Was that Zuber?
McPartlin.
McPartlin? Okay, and I got a second by McPartlin. Again, anybody wish to speak? I'm just being doubly careful because I can't see.
You still have Roland and Adrian's hands up.
Clerk, do you need to let them in?
I am not able, I'm not having that option. Just give me 1 second here.
All right.
Michael, are you able to see the participants?
I'm not.
I got disconnected for a moment and I had to make Michael the host. However, I'm not able to come back to that.
I mean, people with their hands off have a cross through their microphone. So, you know, unless they can.
There are a couple participants, attendees that have their hands up. Roland is one and Adrian Brandt is another.
Okay, well, if you can't figure out how to get them in and they can't figure out how to unmute themselves, then I'm going to have to move forward with the vote. Clerk, please call the roll.
Veronica Vargas,
Yes.
Bob Elliott,
Yes.
John Marchand. John Marchand, Kathy Naram.
Yes.
Melissa Hernandez,
Yes.
Philip Alone,
Yes.
Benjamin Cantu,
Yes.
Bernice King Tingle,
Yes.
Karen Stepper,
Yes.
Paul Akinjo,
Yes.
Sol Jobrak is not here, Bob Warner,
Yes.
Leo Zuba,
Yes.
John McPartlin,
Yes.
John Marchand.
Yes.
Okay,
I'll vote yes too.
Okay.
Scott Haggerty.
Thank you, yes.
Mhm.
Motion passed unanimously, thank you. So I now am going to move to director's discussion comments and any agenda requests. Are there any if there are, please raise your hand. Are you seeing any hands?
I have my hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Director Tingle.
My question is that what time frame can we expect the the study to come back on the double track.
Oof.
You know, let me, Rick, do you have any thoughts on a timeline?
I really don't want to guess right now. I think we just need to get back to you because there's a lot of complications with the double track, particularly in the freeway segment and the interface with Caltrans and the interchanges there. To do that's obviously going to be somewhat significant to mess with some more of those. So I don't have a good answer for you at this time.
Okay, I was just
I
trying
don't
to
even
get,
think we have the funding yet. Well, maybe with this, we can dig into it with this new funding. So,
yeah, I was just trying to get an idea of whether a request like this would be 3 months, 6 months, or what have you.
okay, I'm
Because
sorry.
yeah.
We should be able to get a level, order of magnitude in, I would say, 3 months.
Okay,
Thank you.
any other directors have any questions? Just if you do, speak up.
Nobody has hands up.
Thank you for your help. With that, we're going to adjourn this meeting. Our next meeting is June 10th, and it says via teleconference, via Zoom, but we will maybe we'll get to meet. So we'll just see what happens. It may be on Zoom and it may not be, but coronavirus is going to be with us for a long time. We don't have a vaccine and we need to start learning to live with it and quit hiding from it. So maybe we'll be meeting together next time. So with that, we're adjourned and appreciate everybody's attention and how hard they're working in your own jurisdictions right now and still attending these meetings. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Now it comes on.
Yes. Okay, so we're adjourned until June 10th.